Hello, my loves. Today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories, and if you've enjoyed a Reddit story, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? Maybe that's the notification bell too, and let's start with today's story. My partner doesn't seem to care about what bothers me. My partner and I have been together for 2 years. We have lived together for 1.5 years. From the beginning I knew he had OCD surrounding germs/contamination. This didn't bother me because I am a clean person. However, this has still been a battle for me. I've had to change everything in my routine to accommodate for this extra cleaning/hand washing. Those who have a partner with OCD will understand. I've told him from the beginning that I am an organized person. I don't like clutter or things on counters/floors. This doesn't mean I won't leave dishes sometimes or close out the hamper. I'm not a perfect person, no one is. I just try my best to stay on top of it all and not leave mess everywhere, since it causes me immense anxiety. My problem is, he seems to not care about trash or clutter in our room or anywhere. He leaves bottle tops everywhere and Q-tips all over the floor. Same with his clothes and dishes. The other day he spilled powder in the bathroom and did not clean it up for days. You get the gist? Every time I bring up how this bothers me, he says he will take care of it. Sometimes he does, but most of the time he doesn't. I either have to ask again or do it myself. Now, like I said, I'm not perfect, sometimes he cleans up after me too. But I don't feel like I leave things like that all over the floor, or at least to that extent. Lately I've thought that maybe if I stay extra on top of it, then he will too. This is not the case. I continue to come home to clothes and used Q-tips all over the floor. To give him credit, he did clean up the powder in the bathroom, but he used my favorite band t-shirt to do it. This sparked a fight, because I like my clothing to last and I felt like he disregarded my things. It's not the first time either. I've asked him to not use my clothes for those things. We own towels. I promise. I've tried talking to him about how this makes me feel. Like he couldn't care less about what bothers me, yet he's always on my case about washing my hands. Not that I don't wash them, he just has anxiety about it and he can't help but ask me to wash them sometimes. It's OCD. I do understand. But it's beginning to make me feel like his cleanliness is more important than anything else in the world, including how he makes me feel. I don't want to leave him, I love him and see myself marrying this man. He does everything else so right, and will do things to make me feel loved all the time. It's just this one topic that he struggles with. Story: AITA for lying to my boyfriend saying I was OTP with my friends, but instead I was OTP with my ex. My boyfriend, Fred, not his real name, and I have been dating for a month now. He's the type of guy to get jealous when he sees me talking to another guy and will immediately jump into our conversation and say I'm her boyfriend BTW. I've never had a problem with it until today. I've always noticed that he's still friends with most of his exes, and whenever I would ask him about it he would say, "Oh yeah, you can block her," or "We're just friends babe, you don't have to worry. If you don't believe, just go through our messages." I thought it was weird, but still he's a pretty loyal guy and wouldn't seem like the type to cheat. A few hours ago my ex, who is now my friend Jay, texted me off Instagram. Fred noticed I was texted someone and asked who I was texting. I told him I was texting my ex and Fred immediately asked what we were texting about. Not thinking too much of it, I told him that all he said was hey, and I just replied with "Hey bud WSP." Fred told me to tell Jay I have a boyfriend just in case he still had feelings for me. I told Fred that Jay doesn't want me anymore and even told me the day we broke up that he found another girl that he's probably going to date. Jay asked to call me and I told Fred that I was going to say yes BC, it's nice to catch up with an old friend after not talking for months. Fred was mad and told me to add him to the call if I did call Jay. I told him no and just left it at that. Few minutes go by and Jay calls me. I wanted to answer the call, so I told Fred my mom's calling, hold on, then hung up and answered the call with Jay. Not even 5 minutes into the call, Fred texts me saying, "It better be your mom." I quickly texted back, "Yes, it is. She's worried about my stepdad." And kept talking to Jay. For context on what me and Jay were talking about, we were just talking about how our life's going and what did this summer. Jay did try to flirt a little bit, so I kept bringing up my boyfriend when he did. To not make it seem like I was actually talking to Jay, I texted Fred and told him I was OTP with my two friends and it might be a while. He then texts Kay, whenever he texts, that he's either mad or sad. Being the good girlfriend I told Jay that my boyfriend was probably mad at me, so I'ma call him. I called Fred, and when he answered I asked, "What's wrong? Did someone make you mad or something?" He replied with, "Nothing's wrong, I'm fine." Impact resistance. Fred a little too well in impact resistance when he's mad about something, so I kept asking what's wrong with him and if I did it. He snapped at me and yelled, "Nothing's wrong, stop fucking saying something is wrong. Why can't you fathom with that?" I don't know what to do and told him I was going to sleep. I'm done trying to talk to him when he keeps saying communication is key whenever I'm mad at him, but whenever he's mad at me it's no longer key and he just ignores me. Story, whipped up for ending my relationship over outside circumstances. I need help navigating a rather complicated situation. So me, 36-year-old, and my boyfriend, 29-year-old, have been together for 7 months. We are currently doing long distance, as I had to move back to Canada at the end of April, due to shitty circumstances out of my control. My boyfriend is currently living in Texas, which is where I'd lived for 10 years. The reason I had to move back to Canada was because my visa had expired in October 2023. I'd accidentally overstayed 6 months in the US and was technically illegal. My parents were the ones who discovered that when they were going through all our travel documents. Since I am blind and cannot read the printed documents, I had absolutely no idea that I'd overstayed. Me and my boyfriend were actually supposed to move in together later this year. We'd had it all planned out for months, but then my life unexpectedly flipped overnight and I lost everything. IDK if I'll be able to return to the US in the foreseeable future, given the circumstances in which I had to leave. A lot of people had tried to tell me to just marry my boyfriend for a green card, and that seriously got on my nerves. I'm sure those people meant well, but alas, they didn't understand the complexities of immigration. Marriage is not the answer to everything, despite what society thinks. It just goes to show how misinformation gets spread so quickly, especially in America. Me and my boyfriend are also super anti-legal marriage, so this would have gone against our beliefs and values. I'd also heard horror stories from my fellow international students in grad school about how ICE actually has the authority to peep through your windows at all hours of the night, just to make sure that your marriage is legit. That's creepy AF to me, and I would never dream of putting my boyfriend and his family in a position where their peace and privacy would be disturbed. My boyfriend and his mom were also struggling to make ends meet. They could barely afford dog food some days, much less support a foreign spouse with a disability. I actually found out from a childhood friend of mine that even marriage doesn't guarantee you anything permanent. My friend is Canadian and had married an American citizen in 2020. He was given a temporary green card when he married his wife. He was told that he'd have to wait for permanent residency, and that could take years. Sadly, my friend's marriage had ended in divorce 2 years later because his wife had cheated, so in the end he had no choice but to move back to Canada. In any case, I've always thought that the antiquated institution of legal marriage was a super scummy trap. The thought of being legally tied to somebody makes me physically sick. I refuse to be someone's property, and I don't want them to be mine either. We don't need a piece of paper to legitimize our love and commitment. Furthermore, the sleazy government doesn't need to know who I'm sleeping with. I'm scared that me and my boyfriend's relationship might not be able to survive this. The thought of breaking up over outside circumstances makes me sick, but I don't think it can be helped, given the situation. This was the unfortunate case of right guy, wrong time. My boyfriend is currently dealing with a complicated situation of his own and can't leave the US for a while, so visits aren't even an option for us right now. So, would it be unfair to keep holding on to a relationship, given that our future has so many unknown variables? For the record, I am not interested seeing other people, and neither is he. I've had a few talks with his mom, which he doesn't know about, and she said that he's been really upset and depressed for the last few months. He and I have talked on the phone and FaceTimed since I've been back in Canada, and it's just so sad for both of us. At this point, we're not sure when, or even if we will see each other again. His mom doesn't think that it's healthy for either of us to stay together right now, and honestly, I get where she's coming from. I seriously love this woman and consider her the mother I never had. Therefore, I have a lot of respect for her. I have a feeling that I will probably have to be the one to initiate the breakup. The good news is that my boyfriend does want to move to Canada eventually, as he hates living in the US, especially Texas. Even though it's not in the cards for him right now, perhaps it will be someday, but unfortunately that will be later rather than sooner. Story: AITA for not supporting my BF and his coach. I hate 20-year-old, just got into a heated argument with my medium-distance boyfriend, let's call him Doug, 20-year-old. Doug and I met at school where we both participate in the same sport, cross-country. Doug is from a smaller town and has limited options for coaching but grew up working with Liam, 34M. Liam has always been great with Doug and Doug credits him for all of his success. This past fall, right before Doug and I started dating, Doug invited me to travel to a big cross-country race about 45 minutes away to meet Liam. I was excited. I really liked Doug and this seemed like a fun trip. The whole short trip was really fun and I truly enjoyed getting to meet Liam. Flash forward to the spring and Doug and I have been dating for 5 months and are happy. Liam attends one of Doug's races and meets my immediate family and we all hang out with Doug's family. Everyone loves Liam. When school ended for summer, Doug and I went back to our hometowns, around a 4-hour drive. We both helped coach younger athletes in our respective towns and hung out on weekends. I was talking with my boss and high school coach about Doug and I happened to mention Liam and how Doug was still being coached by him even after high school. My coach's face drained of all color and he said I should Google Liam. I was very confused but did so. Turns out Liam had been charged with 3 counts of battery against children and 1 count of child porn. He had not yet been convicted. When I spoke with Doug that night, I expressed how I was a bit upset that I had not been informed of the charges. Doug immediately went on the defensive and kept going on and on about how he didn't support Liam's possible actions but only wanted to support Liam's family, a wife and 6 kids, and honestly all he talked to Liam about was cross-country, so none of it affected that. I told Doug he could do whatever he wanted but that I would never financially support someone with those charges against them. Doug started crying and hit a wall multiple times. He has been known to do this a couple of times in the past and I have always told him how much I hated it. I ended up hanging up the phone and told him to call me back when he was done hitting things. 5 minutes later, he called me back with his mom who kept telling me I have no right to feel upset because Liam was not yet convicted and her children are not gossips. Doug just cried. I explained to her that I felt I should have been told before I traveled with Doug to meet him and introduced him to my family. She said her family had a discussion 2 years ago when charges first started popping up and they had decided they would do nothing unless Liam was convicted. I asked her if her family was allowed to make that choice, shouldn't I be as well? She basically said no. Her family were not gossips and I was never left alone with Liam, so I was never in any danger. Eventually, she left and Doug and I argued more about how I wasn't supporting him in his decision to continue lessons until a conviction, and now that Liam was going to jail, he had stopped lessons. Apparently, Liam was convicted a couple of days ago. But I was an a-hole because I was prejudiced against a man with bad charges filed against him and that I need to be more supportive. AITA? Story: AITA for telling my partner she is neglecting the dog. Me, Mark, and my partner, Rose, have been in a relationship for 3+ years. She is a pilot and I am a manager at a retail store. As you read in the title, she has had a dog for over 3 years as well. Last year she moved away because she found a good pilot job, but unfortunately the places she found to live in do not take dogs. This wouldn't be a big problem since her parents offered to take care of him for however long she needs it, and I live in a small house with my family and a cat. Her mom and dad are amazing guys, they would do anything for their daughter. The mom have some health issues that prevent her from walking the dog, and the dad only walks him when he needs a little more. Because of this I would occasionally come and give him walk, play fetch, etc. She travels somewhat often back home to be with him and to do all the things that she has to do back home. A week ago the parents left for the cottage and the dog stayed home with the sister. This was all fine. But then I receive a message from the dad asking if I can take care of the dog for a couple of days since the sister won't be able to do so anymore. This was a Wednesday. I of course told him I could do that with no problem, so for 2 days after work I would drive to their house and walk him, take him out to play, whatever. The third day came and when I show up the sister was there, so there was no reason for me to go, but nobody told me. I was upset at my partner because for all this time that she has been gone she has left the dog to be the parents' responsibility, and she wouldn't even know who the dog was staying with or what he needed. So I was upset and I tell my partner that I will take the day for me so wouldn't explode on her. Next day comes and we are texting. She asked me if I was feeling better than the day before and I say yes, but I wanted for us to have a little talk on Monday. She was coming home on the Saturday, but she was going to a 2-day festival and clubbing the same night, so I say Monday for her to enjoy her weekend. She is very impatient, which is why I insist on having the talk on Monday, but it wasn't anything crazy, just a couple of things that I have noticed she was doing. She called me manipulative and trying to ruin her weekend by not telling her there, and if me asking her to look for houses was a manipulative thing, so she wouldn't enjoy her weekend. At that moment I get mad, so I explode and tell her that she has been neglecting her dog. The dog is fat because has no exercise or workout, and that her priority shouldn't be a party or a festival but taking care of the dog, instead of being anxious on what to wear, being anxious on who can take care of the boy. I also said why would she get a dog if she wanted to be a pilot and leave the dog in someone's hands for half of his life. I am not proud on how I said things, but not the meaning of what I said. She always pressures me until I say things I don't want to. Now this sparked a massive fight of her excusing herself, but not taking ownership or acknowledging that things have to be done better. All this was so easy to say in a calm manner, but when my partner points fingers at me and call me names is when I lose my cool, and she knows it very well. So what was going to be a nothing crazy is on the verge of a breakup. Story: I finally went no contact for the last time and it feels like freedom, I hope. Growing up, my sister, my mom, my stepdad and myself moved to a different state and my dad followed us there. Almost a year and my dad sabotaged his own job and left back to the original state. Since then we barely saw him, yet to this day he keeps telling everyone he went down to the second state to see myself and my sister all the time. He did not yet when I told him he didn't, I'm wrong, and then when I gave examples, I'm still wrong, but he has this victim mentality that's beyond insane. He also, when I was I think 13 years old, my mom's father died suddenly and we went back to original state for a few days. My father called my mother and stated that if she didn't let my father see myself and my sister he would disown us. My mother was on the verge of a mental breakdown about my grandfather, and she had made it clear why we were in original state. He threatened to disown myself and my sister, while my mom is 2 other times kind of similar to this. So he is a straight up narcissist. You talk to him for 5 minutes and get the gist kind of guy. My family has done so many things, I'm seriously thinking of writing a book. Anyway, one day I was at a restaurant and my father called me and asked if I could watch the dogs for a few days while he was away. I said no, and he started screaming at me while my stepmother sat there and let him, and even added in there, "Well, you stayed at your aunt's house for 2 weeks. I told her, as I just said when I said no, it's because you have 3 dogs that you barely clean up after, and it smells so bad of dog and I am allergic to them. Literally after 30 minutes my throat swells, my eyes water and am so itchy. My father says that's because of mold and not the 330 to 50 pounds dogs trying to get my attention. Don't get me wrong, I love dogs, I take allergy meds, but even those have a limit. I told my father no, and again, I'm wrong about my own body and allergies. He knows all. So, after he screamed at me on the phone where other people in the restaurant were staring, the next day I had to get ready for my first ever plane ride, and he and my stepmom knew I was nervous. I got to the airport, sent a text, nothing. Got on the plane, sent a text, nothing. My aunt sends a text to my stepmom and dad, response. These people are f***ing 58 and 55 years old. Giving me the silent treatment. My aunt and I got into the chauffeur car and I saw my aunt texting my stepmom asking why aren't they responding. My stepmother says, she's being a brat, instead of saying what you guys are doing is not okay. My aunt says, oh, she's young. My father then over the week vacation calls and texts my aunt but won't answer me at all. I was like, okay. So I took them off Facebook. You don't know when someone removes you as a friend. They found out within an hour and texted me saying, I don't know what your problem is, paragraph. I blocked both. Then 2 years later my aunt convinced me to talk to him again and I was like, gig. She pushed and I'm like, okay, I did and I regretted it. Immediate guilt trip. I texted you on your birthday and then when I told him multiple times this is going to take a while for me. I was clear about my pace and boundaries so many times and then he pushed saying I hurt my stepmother's feelings too, when I blocked them. No apology to me, nothing. As I'm typing this I'm remembering the time 4 years ago my stepmother needed to get something done at the hospital, minor procedure, and I was volunteered to take her, and a few days at least before I said no, my father called me while I was sitting at my uncle's watching TV and started screaming about how he had to wind up taking my stepmother to the hospital because I bailed, all that lovely stuff, and how he had to take time off work, yet literally 2 weeks prior he took off a week from work to go to another state. His boss was a total pushover, it was ridiculous. This was only a day thing too, knit, even 3 hours. I never got an apology for that. Sidetrack, sorry. Anyway, so this time my father tries to push me to talk to my stepmother. Of course I did. Of course my stepmother sounded so hurt. No apology from her either. This was a few months ago. So I'm having financial issues and trying to find a job, so my father and stepmother I guess talked and said they would help me with money because they helped her kids and my sister. Not because I'm his daughter. Everything to him is a business transaction, not just because. It's hard to explain. I has given them my time, effort. Say I don't have any friends because I was so mentally conditioned to what they wanted. I'm in therapy, imagine how I felt realizing that. I don't just mean money either, everything. He acts like everything is a favor and you owe him. I let him make me feel for years I owed him my life, I didn't choose to be born. So then any time he called me within the past couple months, when he would call I never got how are you? Are you okay? He only called me to talk about himself, because he was bored and or something happened and he was moody. Example, he called me last Monday and started saying my realtor is a blah 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 and I'm so done with your aunt over something stupid. He yelled at a guy and my aunt said there was not a way to go about it and my father decided she was wrong and is now telling everyone she's crazy. Not once did he even ask about me or my life. When he does, more rare than a blue moon, and it'd only to tell everyone. He's a f-king gossip like you wouldn't believe. He never asked how I was doing, I had to interrupt him and tell him or blatantly state it. I got my tonsils out in 2021 and I MWPT trying to tell my father the doctor said someone needed to look after me for 10 days. He kept saying we'll talk about it later, then freaked when the doctor called after my appointment and told him. Then 10 days later thankfully did good, my stepmother got full-blown COVID and it got to my father. Now it's still only been 10 days and it still feels like I can talk but not much, very sore and still on super pain meds. My father called me and asked him to drive to get him meds and take them to him and food. I was post-op from a tonsillectomy and the doctor told him about not getting sick, care instructions, everything. Damn good doctor honestly, worst part was just a chipped tooth. During healing my father also kept saying how he had a hernia surgery and was up and about 2 days later. Literally anything that happened to me, he had it worse from his mentality. My stepmother had 2 hernias in her stomach and my father brought up HPW, he was good after 2 days. It's like he's on this pedestal and yet has it worse than everyone. The worst part of all of this? Their mentality. The worst part of their mentality that I'm beyond over? Name will do it. In not saying my name because they may find this. I will drop everything and do whatever they wanted, whenever. What really sliced the scandal was a few days ago my stepmother texted me. She never texts, calls first. Ever, it's always you have to contact her, and my father got angry at me in high school I didn't text her, but she never texted me, so my dad screamed at me and I said okay, I will take responsibility, but she hasn't said anything either. Why is this only on me? I was 16 and it was after the first summer I saw her and said they sold their house. I was like okay cool. She said they got less than what they wanted, so I asked how much? She tells me then right after asks, so I heard you're getting unemployment? I said yeah, well that's something for money and nothing else. She never reaches out first. Ever. I'm saying that because if she really cared, why did she tell me about getting money but then asking about unemployment and nothing else? Granted, she could have waited on me to say something, but the feeling of follow-up for asking for money still felt like a trap. I can't explain why. It's hard saying all of this because you guys don't know them, so it can sound normal, but there's always a motive with these two. My stepmother would always throw me under the bus too. Even over something stupid like a holistic fair, she told my father I wanted to go. I went to their house and was in the kitchen and my father blatantly asks, so why do you want to go to this thing? I told him well stepmom said she wanted to go and asked me to go with her, then my father said she told me you wanted to go? I then asked if he wanted hearing aids because I just said the opposite. Granted, it was like he didn't believe me. Yes, this was small, but I mean even something as small as that. It wasn't a big deal thing, but it got to bigger stuff. I told my father something serious a month ago and said, please don't tell anyone, not even stepmother. A week later she called me and was telling me a piece of what I said to my father. This is the icing of almost 27 years of abuse. I promise it's not just a petty thing. I cut them off after my therapy appointment because talking about them made me feel miserable. I felt so back and forth because they're my parents and you hold out hope for change. It's been 2.5 years and the only change was me. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud this time I've smelled the bullcrap before it came. That was also the problem. You shouldn't have to. I may feel emotional later, but right now I actually feel content. I made the right choice and this time there's no going back. There wasn't a big fight to initiate it, so a lot of heat will be on me, but they're the only ones gonna talk me. Who cares? I can finally make friends and move on with my life. Until I talked to them again in January, I never realized how bad our relationship was. I was always, why don't I have friends? Then it hit me, you're the go-to girl for two people who treat you like garbage and expect a diamond. Oh, one more story. So my father needed something. He asked my sister's husband for help. Husband gave father friend's phone number to help out with something. My father didn't like the job that was done, so he called and left a voicemail for the guy. The guy husband's friend came over banging on my father's door with my father's money in hand wanting to give it back. Now my father just said he left a voicemail. He never stated what he left in that voicemail. When I kept asking what did you say and how did you say it, would not answer me. He kept saying how the guy was on drugs and crazy and a hack yada yada. Something else happened between my father and my sister's husband, so my father said the husband isn't welcome but my sister is. My sister hasn't been over since my father gave that ultimatum of me or your husband, and it was a few weeks later. My father was still waiting for my sister to come over. He was still waiting for her to pick him over her own husband. My father and stepmother would get mad because my sister integrated into her husband's family. She has no family, so she integrated with the husband's. Makes sense. I mean, he got mad at my sister and just starts bad-mouthing. He called his own grandchildren feral. My father and stepmother would complain about not being invited to stuff and I kept saying father left, stepdad died, I left, my mother is doing whatever, she rightfully wants nothing to do with you. I would do the same thing too. My sister never wanted my dad around and made that extremely clear. He doesn't get my sister and I want nothing to do with him. My father always used our boyfriends too, until they're useless to him and it would strain our relationships. I can only imagine how bad it was for my sister with her husband after my father showed up and tried to play dominance. That was the final straw, funnily enough. I saw my sister's situation and thought if it were me. If it were my husband and father, I would have strained my relationship with my husband and still tried to be nice of my father's feelings, while my father never thinks of mine. He never does. He never will. If anyone is iffy about cutting contact like I did, F King do it. I want real friends, I want real love, I want my own life. I finally took it back and there was no blowout needed. I blocked them and I don't owe them an explanation because no matter what, after every fight because my father did something and I was rightfully upset, he would say, "Ick, what your problem is." I realized too a year ago, in every single one of my father's stories about a situation that escalated, he was always the victim. I would hear from the other side, then it made so much more sense. I've seen it too then later when my father was on the phone telling one of his friends his version. I said that didn't happen, you did this and that, to where it escalated. Then he told me to shut the F up and mind my own business. Example, freeway was half closed, sign said do 60, guy ahead of him was doing 60, I was passenger, my father rode the tail end of the guy and then when it got back to 2 lanes rolled his window down and yelled at the guy, then cut him off, like his tail end almost hit the front guy's end. Then my father said that guy was senile. He would tell everyone the guy was going deliberately slow, then when it cleared would still stay in front of my father and the guy would flip my father off and try to stay ahead so my father couldn't pass. That's one instance without getting too detailed. That was the thing though, it was always everyone else's fault. He would kick you in the knee and when you get upset he'd say you're the jerk for no reason. I found out all my father was saying about me to a lot of people and it wasn't true, but people would believe it until they met me and act so confused. They then told me what my father said about me, it hurt. A lot. Not anymore. For anyone who reads this long a story, thanks for getting to the end. I needed to vent, but I also wanted people who feel similar to know too they aren't crazy. I would search for some similarities but didn't find much. Story, AITA for taking my mental struggles out on my boyfriend. I am 20 years old, have been with 20 years old my boyfriend for roughly 6 months. Our relationship has been great for the most part, he is an amazing partner to me. We've had our fair share of arguments and disagreements, but we tend to resolve them one way or another. I also struggle with some mental health issues, which can sometimes take a toll on our relationship. My boyfriend reassures me that I can come to him with my struggles, but I tend to find that he struggles to grasp the intensity of my emotions and how real my emotions feel for me. I have not seen a professional about these issues, and they have persisted throughout my childhood and into adulthood, so I've been handling them all on my own. I was grateful to find a support group that helped me get through these struggles, but I lost that shortly after my boyfriend entered my life due to unrelated drama. As a result, I find myself confiding in him a lot for emotional support. I don't have a great relationship with my family, so he's kind of the only person I have right now. Anyways, since we started dating, we have been calling or talking to each other every day or every other day. We make time for it by calling in our free time or staying up a little later at night. We usually hang out once a week, as our busy schedules don't allow us to meet more than that. However, over the past week, I had made multiple attempts every day to see if he is free to call, but he was always busy, typically playing Call of Duty with his friends. A few different nights, I tried to force myself to sleep early because he was busy staying up with his friends. I didn't want to be needy and deprive him of his time with his friends, but it really started taking a toll on me mentally when I was making constant efforts to reach out, and he was busy. He would say things like, "I'm so sorry, I feel bad," to which I reassured him that everything was okay. This is where I think I am to blame. I should have just told him that I would really like it if he could take time out of his day at some point to talk to me, since I feel quite alone. One night, we did end up calling after multiple days of only talking somewhat over text, and I was not in a good state mentally. I felt very alone because I had no friends to turn to, and I expressed this to him. I opened up about some of my recent struggles and feelings unrelated to him, and his only solution so far has been to get stronger mentally. That statement has been said to me a lot by him in an attempt to help me, but it often feels invalidating to how overwhelming my struggles can be. I could tell that seeing me like this upset him, so he told me he needed time alone, and that's how our call ended. I started sobbing after the phone call because I felt like I was pushing him away from myself. The one time I was able to call him, he wanted to be left alone. Now, I'm confused about whether I messed up by placing certain expectations on him, that he will be able to support me through my struggles and would communicate with me on a daily basis. I'm having a hard time navigating this, as I know that my perspective is strongly driven by my emotions, and I don't want to burden my boyfriend in a way that inhibits him from living his life. Story: AITA for telling my partner I don't care about his family vacation. My partner and I have known each other for about 3 years, but we've only been dating for 2. Originally from a smaller town, I moved in with my partner in a bigger city in 2023 when things got serious. My partner never officially came out to his parents. It was a case of we just kind of know, but aren't talking about it. When I moved in, he called his parents and reaffirmed that he was gay, dating me, and that I had moved in. They told him they needed time to process the situation, which I can understand. Fast forward to today, and I still haven't officially met his family, although he's met mine and is very close with them. The only time I've met them was at a wedding where we glanced at each other from across the room. His dad introduced himself but left right after. Sometimes it is awkward. For example, he will be on the phone with his mom or dad and I immediately stop what I'm doing and don't say anything or go to another room because I don't want to make things weird. I've brought this up to my partner before. He is usually empathetic and says he'll plan something so we can meet, but it never happens. His family lives about 45 minutes away from us. My family, because I moved, is now 5.5 hours away. So, it just sucks that much more because I don't have my family to go to it easily at least. To his defense, when he visits, talks to his family, he does tell me that they do ask about me, mostly his mom. But that only goes so far. Every year, they go on a family vacation for a week, my partner, his parents, his sister, and her husband. I stay behind. Last year, I understood why I couldn't go since I had just moved in 4 months prior. But this year, it's hitting me hard since it's been over a year, and his family hasn't made any effort to get to know me. I have to spend another week alone at home, and it hurts that his sister and her partner are included though they are a straight couple. My partner has been sending me snaps of the vacation. I told him that I'm glad he's having fun, but that I don't care to see or hear about it. I hate to make him feel a certain way during his vacation, but I think I'm justified in my response. Story: AITA for continuing to date my boyfriend of 2 years when I feel attraction. I am 23 years old, have been dating my current boyfriend 29 years old for 2 years. How we met: I met him 2 years ago when I got transferred work locations. During that period of my life I was not looking for a relationship, and had never been in a serious relationship before. I had just escaped a mentally, verbally abusive roommate, was going through multiple changes in my life, such as moving homes, changing workplaces, and discovering myself as an individual. I also would like to add that right off the bat, after our first initial meeting I had absolutely attraction to him. He's a bigger guy, 29 years old, 350 pounds or so? And I am 23 years old, considerably younger, a fraction of that weight, sitting at 120 pounds. And quite honestly, dating an overweight guy never even crossed my mind. During that time when I met my now boyfriend, I made it very clear that I was not looking to be in a relationship, that I did not want to date him. I even went as far as sending some pretty hefty text rants about how I felt like he was encroaching on my life too quickly. He assured me constantly during that time about how he didn't expect a relationship out of this and that he just enjoys my company, that he'd wait until I was ready. So, me being lonely figured, what's the worst that could happen? I assumed I had made my boundaries rather clear and that he understood I wanted nothing more than friendship. In hindsight, saying he would wait until I was ready was a major red flag. Fast forward about 8 months after our initial first meeting, we began hanging out every week, going out to lunches and hitting it off emotionally. Until one day, we were sitting in his car and he began making comments about how I'm basically his girlfriend now because he already has met my mom. Which caught me off guard. I didn't really know how to react or what to say cause we had already gone over this so many times over text. So I chose to not comment and remain quiet. Since then it's been this almost unspoken relationship and quite honestly I have no clue how we got to this point as it was never my intentions or what I wanted. But obviously, after 2 years I care about him very much. We even say that we love each other. But I can't help but feel guilty, selfish for allowing it to go on for so long. He's become my best friend and I can't even imagine my life without him. The issue is, we haven't had sex ever in the 2 years I've known him. I've basically become completely celibate, and I crave a sexual relationship with someone else. But because of this unspoken relationship I feel like I can't explore with anyone else or it would be cheating on him. I don't know what to do here, and feel constantly conflicted because I never asked for this. Is this even a relationship if we don't even kiss or have sex ever? At this point we're essentially just best friends. Story, AITA for having a tone. This morning my husband and I were parked in front of our apartment and he started rolling a joint. I started getting nervous because our landlord is really not about that life and the way we were parked, our entire apartment complex could see into our truck and what he was doing. I asked if we could move down the block and he ignored me. Increasing nervousness pitched my tone into a nervous and angry one because my husband just comes from a family of people who don't think the rules apply to them. He's a pusher. He's always pushing the rules and limits like this. When I angrily, not yelling or swearing or disrespecting, asked if we could compromise and park differently next time so our whole apartment couldn't see us, he started yelling at me. I'm not going to lie about my role in this because I want an honest response. I matched his energy immediately. I'm not gonna sit there and get yelled at. However, I was not yelling before. He yelled first. I screamed just as loudly, "Don't fucking yell at me," and he looked at me like I was crazy for matching his energy and started saying wow and calling me immature. He says he has the right to yell at me if I have a tone. Even if I wasn't yelling first. And if I ever have a problem with him, that my tone has to be a certain way or he won't listen and reserves the right to scream at me and call me names unless I exude a tone that's appealing to him at the time. No matter how respectfully I bring it to him. He says I sound like his mother, so he treats me like his mother. And it gives me the worst ick. Like what spouse wants to bed a man who keeps comparing her to mommy? This is a repeat problem in our otherwise great relationship. Every time I talk in a way that is not downright matronly, and not catering to making him and his ego as comfortable as possible, he lashes out, and then once he gets me all worked up he goes stone-faced and acts like I'm crazy for reacting. And I somehow lost the argument for reacting to his emotionality in the first place. It makes me want to self-harm. It makes me feel like I'm going crazy. AITA for having a tone about my husband risking my eviction by rolling a joint in front of our entire apartment. Story, AITA for not inviting my mom to my wedding. My mom and I am 26 years old, have never been super close due to a pretty trauma-filled childhood. Although my dad never had court-ordered custody, when I was around 15 years old, I moved in with him and started to limit my time with my mom. She had married a top-tier abusive second husband mentally and emotionally, not physically, and after 5 years of it and finally being old enough to stand up for myself, it was time to leave. Before I had left, I had tried to make her see the abuse she had seen it literally. He would do it right in front of her, but she told me I was being dramatic. We 2 older siblings also grew up in a religious cult, one that her father was the leader in. The leaders in the cult didn't like my birth father, which is why they got a divorce in the first place, and took it out on us. Preaching that we were sinners in front of the whole congregation and forcing prayer circles on us. Luckily, since my parents were divorced and we were able to leave the cult and see the real world, we realized it was whack and never went back. Because my mother was born into it, She couldn't see how crazy the whole situation and how we were being treated was. Anyways. Fast forward to now, being 26, I've had time to reflect and grow and heal all of the trauma that I endured in my youth. I'm happy, living my best life. I have remained in contact with my mom, mostly out of obligation it feels. Texting when something happens that feels significant, holidays, birthdays, etc. This cult recently, about a year ago, disbanded, meaning my mom is now having to face reality. It's quite an altered reality. She is big on deflecting blame. Nothing is ever her fault, etc., etc. She still hasn't realized all of the trauma that she allowed by being complacent and not standing up for her children. She's on quite the find yourself journey, and as her 3 oldest children, she also has 3 more younger ones. We've had to be therapists instead of children. We never get asked how we are, or anything along those lines. It's as if we are just her friends. For me, this was when I decided it wasn't worth the mental load. It was always a trauma dump, and it was exhausting. We no longer talk, but are still friends on Facebook so we can see if something happens. I recently got engaged and posted it on Facebook. Everyone in my fiancé's family was commenting and texting me saying congratulations. I was waiting for a text from my mom, it never came. It seemed to really cement the fact that she really does not give a single crap about me anymore, and that it's just all about her. I was making the guest list for the wedding and listed everyone in my family off besides her. I've been on the fence on whether or not this makes me a POS. Why should I let her come to my big day when she doesn't care? Not to be petty, but I feel like she needs to suffer the consequences of her own actions. She is the one who ruined any form of maternal bond we could have had. Story: AITA for not wanting anything to do with my stepmother. My 26 years old, 62 years old my father divorced, 60 years old my mother. When I was 18, we had found my father had been cheating on my mother for around 2 years at that point. He is still with the woman he cheated my mom with, who I'll call Tanya. Tanya is 39 years old at the moment, and has 2 daughters from a previous relationship, aged 10 and 17. Now, the problem comes here. After the split, my father became more attentive with us, however he insists I integrate Tanya into my life. He does not do this with my brother. Every time I want to go out with my father he would insist in bringing her along. At first I resisted because in my eyes that women tore our family apart, but after a while I decided that I was an adult and my father was one as well and he deserved to be happy, so I met her and went to a couple lunches with her. During those outings Tanya tried to act nice at first, buying me gifts and whatnot, but with time her true colors surfaced. She would act entitled, pick up random fights with my dad in front of me, and honestly acted like a spoiled child in front of him, trying to get his attention, and he would fall hook and sinker to this. This made me tired of her, and I decided that I wanted nothing to do with her, as my lunchtime with my dad was the only time I saw him and I didn't want to spend it watching a fight with someone just 12 years older than me. I told my dad that I didn't want to go out if he would bring her, leading him to lie on numerous occasions. Oh, no, it's just the 2 of us to get me to go, and then he would show up with her, or her daughters. On those times I would just get up and leave, and my dad stopped bringing her along, but at the same time he has stopped seeing me that often, and on the times we go out he keeps mentioning her, which I have asked him not to do. The other day we had a discussion, in which my father accused me of only caring about his money and not him, and I replied that he is the one who never has time for me, and it's not my fault he never wants to see me. He then replied that it was my fault because I rejected Tanya and he loves her so he doesn't want to go out without her. Now it's important I don't care if my father stays with her, as I said we're all adults, I just don't want any relationship with her. I didn't choose her, my father did. I don't mind seeing my dad less often, but I want those few visits Tanya free. I can see that my dad misses me, and wants to see me more often, but I have put my foot down and will not go if she is there. For the record, I have told my father exactly why I don't like her, and that it is not jealousy, it's her personality, and he just brushes it off and says that she is jealous of me, and that I give her reasons to be jealous. Story: Wibda, if I didn't let my mother walk me down the aisle. I am 22 years old and getting married to 25 years old my fiancé's next April. We are having a very untraditional wedding, think fairies meet lightsaber, and I am super excitedly planning everything on my own because we have a small wedding budget. 59 years old my mom was invited to be a part of the wedding planning to help me out a bit because I am chronically ill and there are some things I physically cannot do. But this has become a bit of a problem. As a bit of context, 52 years old my dad left when I was 3. My mom raised me and my brother alone in a very impoverished community, and she always did her best to take care of us. She was always a bit controlling, but sometimes when you are a kid you need that sort of structure, so I understand looking back. But when I grew up, the controlling aspects of her personality did not stop. This all came to a bit of a head last year, when my then boyfriend and I moved in together. She insisted that we would never get married if we did this. When we got engaged 3 months later, she insisted we were taking things too fast. And got very angry at me, yelling at me for making the same mistakes she did. She had been married 3 times. And then, a month later, when her sister found out we were living together, she decided we needed to go ahead and get hitched so we wouldn't be living in sin. All of this I chalked up to be my mother being controlling like she always was. I have learned to ignore it for the most part. But she recently has crossed a line. As previously mentioned, I am chronically ill, and I am getting a lot of medical tests and things done and am trying to get treatment to mitigate some of the pain and fatigue I currently have. Recently, after a trip to the ER, I called my mom to inform her of what was going on and she began insisting that fiancé would leave me if I continued to act as sick as I do. She has also mocked every single choice I've made about the wedding that would make the day easier for me. I was rightly very upset by this, as I do not have control over my own body and have been dealing with debilitating symptoms since I still lived with her. She is now discussing some very personal parts of my health journey, including my menstrual cycle, with family friends I have not had contact with for years. When I tried to confront her about disclosing such personal details of my health and body, she insisted that she was in the right and that I was just being hateful to her like I always am since I met fiancé. My mother was going to walk me down the aisle while my father was going to officiate. He is a minister, so it was a nice way to keep the peace between my parents, but now I am not sure I want her to talk me down the aisle because she is only causing me stress and grief about my relationship with my mother. I am also not sure who I would get to walk me down the aisle if it wasn't her, but I know that I cannot maintain the relationship as it currently stands, so I don't know what to do. Story: AITA for questioning my boyfriend and my relationship. My boyfriend, 28 years old, and I am 28 years old, have been together for 4 years. We've had our ups and downs, and there is way more than I could get into about some highly upsetting and unhealthy things that have happened. I've chosen to get over them, but I'm starting to question myself and the relationship over something that happened last night. I have a reminder on my phone that goes off silently every hour, 1-minute dance party, and I use it during the day when I'm working to remind me to get up and stand. I've had this for about 2.5 years. My boyfriend defensively asked me a month ago who was texting me in the middle of the night. I got confused and asked him what he meant, and he said he heard my phone vibrate. I explained to him that I have my reminder, which we've talked about in the past, and also that we have a security camera that gives me notifications. I showed him my phone and he said he understood. I didn't like the tone and the lack of confidence he showed towards me, but I decided it was fair enough for him to ask. We've also talked openly that we don't care whether the other looks at their phone, never happens, but we know that it's fine. I truly don't care because I have nothing to hide. I woke up in the middle of the night last night to him demanding to know who I was texting. I was so confused and saw that I was leaning over my phone on the side table. I think I was turning my phone over in my sleep because my notification went off for our security camera and the phone was lighting up the room. I'm not sure because it all feels like a dream, but he was angry and demanded to know who I was texting. I stated I didn't know because in that moment I wasn't sure what was going on. He demanded my phone and I handed it over and he scrolled for a while, then gave it back. I put it on my charger and fell immediately back to sleep. It all felt like a dream, and I thought it was until I woke up this morning and really thought about it. I've explained to him why my phone will sometimes light up in the night, doesn't vibrate for security camera, light one time, vibrate for reminder. He knows. I should turn it over before I fall asleep, but that's my own forgetfulness. I feel like his lack of trust in me is complete unfair, as I have never given him a reason to doubt me, ever. I don't have any male friends, as I haven't spoken to any of them since college. I work from home, so I have no coworkers I'm interacting with during the week. I hardly ever leave the house. He uses my car and is gone a lot, and I am always here. We have security cameras which he has access to, so he literally could see if I left and when, but that never happens because I'm home 95% of the time, and if I'm out of the house I'm usually with him. So I feel like it's unfair and insulting for him to even have a sliver of doubt towards me. I have very truthfully spoken to him how I feel about cheating. It's a non-option and I would never. I've also told him that cheating is completely unacceptable to me, and if he ever did, then it would be over. There would be no discussion. I thought he actually heard me when we had these discussions. He, however, has shown me multiple times that he does not respect my boundaries. He messaged one of my old friends we saw at a party and lied about it. She messaged me and told me, and her husband also blew up at my BF for messaging her. He apologized profusely and told me he meant nothing by it. He has gone out with a work client who is a beautiful woman our age and got wasted with her and drove home drunk. And left me in Reed, so I was worried sick. He went out with her a good bit and I let him know how much it upset me, but he did it anyway. He went out of his way to meet an 18-year-old client at a coffee shop and was 2 hours late to getting home when I was having health issues and needed him. He didn't tell me what he had been doing until a week later. Girls constantly flirt with him in my face, and it's rude. We've had more girls than I can count who've asked him if they could join us in bed, and I've made it very clear I don't want a threesome. It bothers me that they feel so okay with asking him even though he says no. He blew up at me at a bar once when I told him he looks just like his mom and that he has good genes. He then took that as me wanting his dad and began yelling at me that I wanted his dad, and he couldn't believe I was that type. I am still deeply insulted and disgusted that he even thought that. I haven't seen his family since, and that was a year and a half ago. I don't want to see them. He once yelled at me and told me I was unfaithful because I spoke to his uncle at a family gathering about his aunt who is a photographer. I'm also a photographer. She wasn't at the gathering, but the uncle was telling me that his wife would love to meet me and talk about photography if I wanted advice. She is more experienced than I am. I've seen him message old friends and exes on social media and Snapchat. He's gotten angry when I mentioned a football player I thought was cute when I was in middle school. He gets angry if I don't answer the phone right away. The list can go on. I'm just really insulted that, as someone who has never once considered unfaithfulness, has had him point a finger at me when he has 3 fingers pointing back at him. He has given me a million reasons not to trust him, and yet I do. And he has the audacity to question me. I'm insulted, and it's really made me think deeply about whether I even want this to continue. I am not a person of low moral character, and for him to act like I am and not trust me I don't know, it just really makes me angry. Story, AITA for telling my husband I would never want children with him. Me and my husband have been married for going on 2 years now. Recently we bought our first house together. We closed at the 1st of January. Since we've bought our home, my husband has begged for a dog. While I love dogs, I just never wanted one inside the house. Eventually, after months of begging, I gave in with the exception that I got to pick the breed. He wanted a bigger breed dog and I did not want a big dog in the house. We compromised and ended up getting a smaller breed of dog. When getting this dog, I specifically explained that he was expected to take care of at least 50% of the dog's needs. We would have taken care of the pup. Of course, he helped with buying the pup's crate, toys, puppy pads, etc., because that part of owning a pup is fun, right? We brought him home on a Friday, and he was crate trained within the first 3 days. My husband did not assist with this at all, and in fact complained that he couldn't sleep in our bed, which the one time he did, he peed all over our sheets. The week after we brought him home was my husband's vacation. He gets off for a full 7 days paid. I thought during his vacation he would want to spend time with the dog he begged for over 5 months for. I was wrong. I woke up with the pup, I fed and watered the pup, played with the pup, put him down for naps, ensured he got exercise, and of course took him out to potty. I couldn't leave the dog alone with my husband BC. He won't watch him close enough to ensure that he won't use the bathroom in the house. He plays maybe 5 minutes with the dog when coming in and then fusses that all the pup does is bite. He's a puppy, of course he bites. Anyways, to make this story shorter, I do everything for this dog, everything. Fast forward to the problem at hand. One evening my husband and I are talking and somehow the topic of kids get brought up. Before I thought I told him that getting a puppy with him made me realize I would never want to have children with him. For very obvious reasons, because he knew exactly what I was talking about. He blew up, accused me of calling him a piece of shit and many of other things, which I never said. I simply explained that I wouldn't want kids because I know I would be doing all the raising and taking care of them. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.